Welcome to Journaling with Nature, the podcast for those who want to turn curiosity into wonder, a pencil sketch into a rabbit hole of discovery, a moment of stillness into a life full of joy. I'm your host, Bethan Burton. Let's open the pages of our nature journals and explore this world together. Hello, this is episode 52. Firstly, I'd like to start by saying a huge thank you to all those new folks who have recently joined me on Patreon and to those who have been supporting the podcast for a while. Last week, I joined Marley Pfeiffer on his YouTube channel along with Melinda Nakagawa and Amaya Shreve to talk about nature journaling and Patreon. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's a platform that lets people support creators with a small monthly donation, as little as $1 per month. And this financial support gives us the ability to provide free content. For me, it's the podcast. For Marley, it's creating a weekly video for the Nature Journal show. Melinda offers nature journaling workshops, and Amaya is creating an inspirational magazine for young nature journalers. This work is deeply fulfilling and we do it with love, and at the same time, it takes a lot of hours each week, and your support is so valuable to help us continue. So I just wanted to say thank you. Today, I'm very excited to introduce you to my guest. Her name is Sabrina Deschamps, and she's an interpreter and educator helping to connect people with nature. Sabrina also has another passion, and that passion is makeup. I met Sabrina through Instagram, where she has started a project that's fusing both her work as an environmental educator with her love of makeup. To me, this is nature journaling with a twist. This is Sabrina using makeup as her paint and her right eye as her canvas, but this is nature journaling. She captures the essence of her natural subjects using color, shape, and detail. She looks at nature, she learns about her subject, and she forms a deeper connection each time she creates a makeup look. Her account is unique and fascinating, and when I met her, I knew I wanted to introduce her to you. Let's listen. Sabrina, thank you so much for being here with me. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So you are an environmental educator, an interpreter, and you have a really unique project on Instagram. But before we go into your Instagram project, which is where we met, I'd love to first talk about your work in environmental education and interpretation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that didn't happen in my life until I got to college.
Okay.
So I never even knew that this was a possible job when I was a kid. It wasn't even on my radar when I was a kid. I wanted to be a makeup artist, and I know we'll get into that in a little bit. But I was so like, I want to do makeup. That's what I want to do. But interestingly enough, I always wanted to teach. Like, I always told myself, like, at one point I want to train. But that's not where life took me. And in college, I got my first position as an environmental educator on campus. So I was there for about 2 years, and then I became an environmental educator, an intern at on U of M's campus. And from there, it was just one of those things where I was like, man, I really like doing this. And I applied for the organization where I'm at now, and they accepted me, and I've been there ever since. And it's definitely something that just I fell into. Like, it was not anything that I was like, man, I want to educate, I want to do all that kind of stuff about the natural world. It was definitely something I just kind of fell into. So
that's amazing.
And now I'm here.
Yeah. And tell me, what was your program at university? Were you studying environment?
So when I started at U of M, I was doing psychology.
Okay.
And I was 2 years in, and then I decided, I was like, I don't think this is for me. Yeah. And I had always liked animals, and it wasn't so much the natural world just yet. And I was like, well, I guess environmental science sounds kind of fun. Yeah. Little did I know that was going to tack on like 4 extra years onto my program. But I did environmental science, and at U of M you have the option for a track, so I did biology.
Okay. Wow. And so for those who don't know, can you describe when someone says they're an interpretation, can you describe what interpretation means?
I laugh because this is like such a common question that we get all the time. You ask any interpreter, and the one question we always get is, what language do you translate or interpret? And it's like, no, that's not what we are. But so what it is, it's taking education to the next level is the way I like to describe it. So not only are we educating folks about the natural world, but we're also taking that resource, whatever we may be talking about, whether it's a plant or an animal, and we're making meaningful connections with them in their day-to-day life. So being able to bring those emotions and make those connections, that's the difference between just an environmental educator versus an interpreter. We're taking those resources and bringing a lot more meaning to them.
That is great, because when we help someone be moved, when we help someone connect with an emotion, that's when they become really on board with what's there. And so tell me, how do you do that? Because I saw some photos of you with children, and you were presenting some animals to them in the photograph. And I'd love to hear about how you go about that, how you go about bringing nature alive for visitors.
You know, one of the things that we always do, and it's kind of also part of our training, is that we are always, you know, it's always taking that one thing that they encounter in their everyday life, you know, or relating it back to them in some way. Just kind of like off the top of my head, here in Michigan, we've been having a lot of rain lately. And so that can really be a good segue when talking about like planting native plants in your yard. And, you know, if someone's had flooding in their basement, you know, you make that connection with them by saying, you know, how many of you have had flooding in their basement? You know that one way to do, you know, to prevent that or minimize that flooding is to plant native plants in your yard, and you go into all of that explanation. So even something that small is talking about flooding, because there's all those emotions that come with it. You know, there's the frustration, the anger, that just, we've been experiencing that a lot here in Michigan lately. So that's one of those things where you're just able to kind of connect with people on. So. Yeah.
I love that. So let's talk about your project on Instagram, because I love it. And I'm not a makeup person, but I just love what you're doing. I find it so fascinating and beautiful. And so let me describe it a little bit, and then you can talk more about it. So you choose something in nature, often a bird or an animal, but sometimes a plant or even a landscape, and then you use makeup to capture the essence of the subject. And I'd love for you to talk more about it and more about the project and what's happening there.
Yeah, so thank you for all of those kind words. It's very sweet. I appreciate that. So the idea, so to kind of, to get it in all of its, you know, in every aspect of it, it's one of those things when I describe it, we kind of have to go back to like middle school Sabrina, because in middle school, like the natural world that was not part of my world. I was very much like into punk rock. I had, you know, dyeing my hair crazy colors and, you know, having makeup, and like makeup was like my creative outlet. That was one of the things I just gravitated towards so early on. And then as I got into this field, I still didn't want to let go of that other part of my life, you know? Yeah. So like I still love my band t-shirts and my Doc Martens and my ripped jeans and all that stuff. But sometimes that style is not very common in our field. Yes. And so, you know, like, you know, in college classes, like I was the one dressed in all black, like sitting in the back of the room. That was me. And so with that, what ended up happening is that I kind of felt like I was living like almost like two lives almost, because, you know, I would go to work and I'd have my hair tied back, no makeup on. And then I would, and then like, I would go out with my coworkers and I'd look like a totally different person. And they'd be like, who is this person? And, I would explain it and I'd be like, yeah, this is what I love. And, but ultimately at one point I just felt like there was just these two worlds that I just I felt like I had to keep separate,
Yes.
And then with COVID, I had more time on my hands, and this idea was kind of always brewing. I was like, man, that'd be so cool to like take makeup and the natural world and somehow fuse them together like that. And since, like I said, since I had more time during COVID, I was like, you know what? Let's just see what happens. Let's go for it and let's see what happens. And yeah, now here we are to think like over a year later, now I'm being interviewed about it on a podcast is something I never would have thought in a million years. It was just an idea, a hobby that I had, and just the love that it's gotten has just been overwhelming, and I couldn't be happier. So that's that in a nutshell.
I love it because you capture something with each post, and so you have a photo of the subject, I should say, and then above that you have your own makeup look. Oh, is it always the same eye? It
is always the same eye, yeah. So it's always my right eye. So whenever I do these looks, I'm not like, I don't do a full face. It's literally just right there. That's it. Just the little square of my right eye. That's it.
So you have them side by side, and you can see when you're looking at them what you've picked out, what you have chosen to highlight. And I'm really interested in your process. Like how do you know what details are going to be important for capturing the essence of a subject? How do you choose what to put in and what to leave out?
So when I do my looks, I try to keep as much as possible in the look. So I try not to leave out, color, of course. So color is always the first thing. It's like, okay, what do I have in my collection that I can, that will best represent the color of the object? And then sometimes I always try to keep shape in there. So a lot of the times when I'm doing birds, I kind of wing out my look a little bit.
Yes.
And then, if I'm doing like a more rounded plant, for example, I try to keep that round. And then like I just recently posted a look and it was a snake, and I tried to get like just the curvature of the snake and some of the details in the look. So some of it has to do with, just making sure I get the color and the shape, and then the finer details. Also, I also want to make sure that like my skill set, I can do it with my skill set, because sometimes I just get ideas and I try them out and it looks awful, and I have to just wipe my eye and do it all over again. But yeah, I mean, I try to keep as much of the object, I try to stay as true to it as possible. So sometimes it takes me like 2 or 3 times to do it, but yeah, usually I like the way they turn out. So
yeah, one of my favorites was the cerulean warbler, and I loved it because you captured the color so beautifully, but you used the curve of your eye, and it just so perfectly captured the posture of the bird as it crouched on a branch. I just thought it was genius. Like if you look at the photo and then the curve that you've used to represent it on the eye was just so perfect, is this little crouching posture. And I absolutely loved another one. I was looking through them and just getting so excited about the way you've done it. The white-headed vulture. So you had blue.
Yes.
Yeah, you had blue and pink. And you also had just this whiteness around the eye, but it was just fluffy in the exact same way as the vulture. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so one, I just love vultures. So I was like, okay, for that series, I was like, I've got to do these right. Like, I can't mess these up. So for the white vulture, I really wanted to capture, like you said, like the white fuzziness that's on the head. And I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? It's going to translate well. And all it was just a stippling motion. I just literally just took I took some white eyeshadow, mixed it with some water, and then all I did was just stipple it on my eye, and towards the back of the head, it kind of comes to like a point almost, some of those feathers. So again, I kind of winged it out, and I made sure that I kind of got the shape of, like, at the profile of it, just the shape of its head. So, but yeah, sometimes it's just something simple like that. It's just like, okay, I guess a stippling motion's going to work for this one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So you said you wanted to be a makeup artist right from the start. Did you learn all these techniques just from practicing, or did you train?
So I am all self-taught. So,
Okay.
like I said, I got into it in middle school, and I was one of those people that, like, I was watching videos after videos, learning about it. I was following, like, my favorite makeup artists at the time. And then a lot of the times too, some of the makeup counters, they'll have like a workshop day where, customers can just come and watch, one of their makeup artists. And that's what I was doing. So anytime any of those, makeup counters was having those events, I was there. And like, I was right in the front row watching it. So no, I've not been formally trained, and because of that, I don't really call myself a makeup artist, because I feel like, to kind of gain that title, you have to go through the proper training. But I do say I'm a makeup enthusiast, and I enjoy it, and I love doing it. But yeah, no, all self-taught.
I'm just smiling because I just love what you're doing for so many reasons. I think it's incredibly creative. I invited you here on the podcast because for me, nature journaling is capturing something about nature, what you see in nature, and putting it down in a creative way. And I just feel like you're doing it on your face instead of on paper, but you're doing nature journaling because you are expressing what you see in nature in a creative way. And I also love that you're challenging the stereotypes for who is allowed to be in nature. We have this idea that girls who are in nature are a certain way. Like you said, at work you're sort of with the hair pulled back. But you're challenging this, that you can actually love nature and makeup and be very feminine and present yourself in this way at the same time. And I'd love for you to talk about that, about the two... This thing of challenging who's allowed to love nature.
Yeah, so I just, like you saw, I was just smiling from ear to ear just now, because that, for me personally, I didn't feel like I could be in the natural world, the field of it, because of that, because I liked what I liked. When I was coming up in the field, you didn't see that a whole lot. So like I never saw girls with full faces of makeup on, doing programs. I didn't see people who were tattooed. I didn't see any of that. And so I'm happy to say that that's changing now. I'm starting to see, people who are tattooed teaching about reptiles and plants and all that kind of awesome stuff. But I didn't see it growing up or coming up in the field. And at one point, I was discouraged. I was questioning, is this something that is a right fit for me? Is this something that I can do? And for a while, I did put that, my love for makeup and all of that on the back burner, because I felt like I couldn't express it, And one of the biggest concerns was not being taken seriously.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but it's just like, for some reason, when women wear makeup in our field, it's for some reason, we're not taken seriously. And that was one of my biggest concerns. And so, at one point though, I noticed that I wasn't whole. So like when I would do programming, I did this weird experiment, to be honest with you. Like there would be days when I would wear makeup while I was doing programs, and then there were days when I wouldn't, and I just felt so much better when I had makeup on and just being more myself, because I got to be myself. And the response was overwhelming too, because, I would, like, not only was I talking with people about, let's say birds, for example, but then all of a sudden I would have a conversation, and like a lady who attended my program would be like, "I love your eyeshadow. What are you wearing?"
Yes.
And then so now all of a sudden there was that ability to just, not only connect about birds, but then talk about makeup. And so that just made my heart so full. And being able to bring both of those worlds together, I do want, young ladies coming up in our field to know that, hey, you can wear makeup and you can do this. You can do this and be taken seriously, and you don't have to be afraid of that. And when I started my Instagram account, it was for me, in a sense, to be able to have that ability to express that. But then when I started getting some of my followers, and they were messaging me saying, "Thank you for doing this. This is so refreshing. Like, it's so nice to see, a young woman doing this in our field." Like, that just, the why for what I do became so much bigger. And the fact that you just brought that up and I didn't even have to say anything was, I cannot tell you how happy that makes me. And the fact that, other people are noticing that as well, like I said, the words cannot express how happy and how much joy that brings me.
Yeah, I love that. And I really think that, I don't know why, but we seem to box ourselves and each other. Like, if you like makeup, you are supposed to be over here, and if you like nature, you're supposed to wear pants and you're supposed to be over here. And and I have come across other people on Instagram that want to be in nature but want to wear dresses, and for some reason that's confronting for people or challenging. And I really believe whatever we can do to make people feel comfortable, like you said, you're actually feeling yourself when you are interpreting and you're wearing makeup, and that's the way you feel strongest, that's the way you feel most naturally you. Whatever we can do to feel most naturally us is so important to do. And I just love that. I love the way you said it, that this is the full expression of you, and you should be allowed to be taken seriously in the full expression of you.
Yeah. I mean, and I will say, like, there were times when I wasn't, and sometimes it is what it is. Sometimes you just kind of have to roll with it, and but after a while, people will start to know, like, oh, she knows what she's talking about, and the makeup kind of becomes secondary. And like, even like with having tattoos as well, at first they might get some idea of you, but then once they start having a conversation with you, and then all of a sudden your tattoos become like a talking point with, somebody who's coming into the nature center or wherever, then all of a sudden it starts to change. So sometimes it can be discouraging in the beginning, but kind of when you work through that and you just have those conversations with people, all of a sudden it totally changes, it totally disappears, and it does a complete 180, and all of a sudden, it becomes like, so there are some park patrons that we have, and they'll joke around with me and they'll say, "Oh, when's your next tattoo appointment?" or whatever, because now, they can see my tattoos. And all of a sudden that becomes a conversation, and then somehow it turns into talking about a bird or a plant or whatever. So, it takes some time, but I think if there's anybody who is kind of like on the fence and wants to like do that and be themselves, something that I personally learned is that you're going to be more accepted than you think you are. And people are going to love it more than you think that they're going to. So for anybody listening who feels like that, I'd say go for it. Just go for it.
Yeah. Oh, so good. I'd love to talk about tattoos too, because you have a lot of nature-inspired tattoos, and I wonder if that's a different way of nature journaling. We're using the body as a canvas.
So I've always known that I wanted tattoos since I was like 12. And I know that sounds kind of kind of weird, but like it was just something instinctual that I was like, I know I'm gonna have these. I don't know how I'm gonna get them. I don't know what I'm gonna get, but I want them.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, I love flowers. So a lot of the tattoos I have on me right now are flowers. I do have a northern flicker on my forearm, and then I have a polyphemus moth inside my bicep. And honestly, a lot of it is just, I was like, that's my favorite moth, and that's my favorite bird, so I'm just going to get that put on.
Yeah.
And it's not as, like, nonchalant as I make it sound, but it's one of those things where, like, I just knew. Yeah. And it's so fitting for my job. And I'm not going to lie, my northern flicker has come in handy trying to, like, identify it. Like, I've kind of, like, whipped out my arm and was like, this is what we're looking for.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So going back, I'd love to know if you have a favorite look that you've created, because I told you my favorite ones, which were the cerulean warbler and the white-headed vulture. And I wonder if you have a favorite one that you've just gone, yes, I nailed that one.
It's hard for me to pick a look, but I feel like there's a series that I did where it was about the national parks, and the one that I did about the Smoky Mountains, like, there's just something about that one where every time I look at it, I'm like, the angle was right, the lighting was right, the technique was right. And for the rest of those in that series as well, it was like, man, like, those just look great. And also what I really like about that one as well is that's when I started interacting with my followers, and I wanted them to give me input. I wanted them to tell me what their favorite national park was, because that's something that I am working a lot more on. I'm trying to constantly, like, reach out to my followers and be like, hey, what do you think I should do next? And hey, you know, what do you think about this? But yeah, I would say the Smoky Mountains look or in that National Park series, for sure. Those ones, I'm just like, man, those look good.
And tell me about the process, because when I am nature journaling, when I am using art materials to capture something that I'm looking at, there's a real sense of connection with that subject. And I'm wondering how it feels to you and do you feel like it deepens your connection when you're doing a vulture or another subject? Do you feel like the process of creating it into a makeup look connects you with that particular species or that particular location?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it creates a deeper connection, and it also, it's one of those things where I just, like, gain a whole new appreciation all over again, because, kind of going back to the vultures, one of my favorite vultures of all time is a bearded vulture. So I knew, like, I had to do that one, right? And it's, you know, when it's different than from looking at, like, a video of it or just watching a documentary of it, because now I'm looking at that picture, and now I have to look at, okay, what colors am I seeing? What textures am I seeing? And all of a sudden now you're looking at that, I'm looking at that bird in a whole new way, because now I have to, like, really look at it, as opposed to just, you know, be like, oh, that's a really cool picture of one. So yeah, it definitely makes me be like, man, now I still know why I love these birds. Because, I mean, look at these birds are awesome.
Yeah.
And then also too, like, it does help me gain a greater appreciation, especially for animals and plants that I'm not, you know, super familiar with. So a lot of Michigan plants and animals I'm super familiar with. It's just part of my job. But then when people start throwing stuff at me that, like, comes from other parts of the world, I'm just like, wow, you know, because I'm always learning something more, because I always do the research to put that information in the captions. So yeah. So even though that's not a short answer, but in short, yes, it does.
No, that's fantastic. And when you said that, I just remember that you did a whole series of cockatoos, and cockatoos are a huge part of my nearby nature. So that was really fun to see. I wonder how that was as an experience doing a cockatoo series.
So the reason why I did those is because I grew up with family friends who had parrots, and we knew people who had cockatoos. and my grandfather had cockatiels and all that stuff. So I was like, that'd be really fun. And just because of my style, I just love the color black, and the fact that we have black birds flying around, I was like, there's no way that I can't not talk about these birds. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a bird on these cockatoos because they're just so cool. And really that was it. It's just because I thought they were super cool. I loved the fact that they were black birds, and I'm like, we're gonna do a look on these. So.
And how do you choose what's next? Do you get inspired by what you're seeing around you in Michigan, or is it mostly things that your followers are suggesting? How do you choose what's next?
So it's a combination of both. So when I first started, it was easier to figure out what was next, because it was like, okay, I'm going to do reptiles, and then I'm going to do butterflies, and then I'm going to do moths. But then now this time around, it's like, okay, I've already done moths, I've already done this, I've already done that. So that's when I reach out to my followers and I'm like, hey, what are you guys interested in?
Yeah.
And now, I'm starting to get more ideas of, how can I tie these, plants and animals more to, tie it more to humans. So like, I'm thinking of like, right now I'm thinking about ideas for Halloween, like, what do we know about Halloween? What are some plants that would fit into the Halloween theme? So it's evolved. So before it was I chose, and now it's what do my followers want to see?
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I tie this into like seasons, or tie this into holidays and things like that? So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Do you ever wear the makeup looks out? Have you ever gone out with a butterfly eye or something like that? Or do you just do it and then move on?
So a lot of the times I just do it and move on, because when I do these looks, it's like late at night.
Okay.
So I usually work on a look from like 8 to 11 at night, because it takes me quite a while to do it. And then I wipe it off and go to bed. So sometimes it's sad, because it's like, I don't want to wipe this off. But other times, I'll walk out with it on. If I do the other eye, since I'm only walking, since I only do one eye, I have to do the other one. But yeah, like, I'm not afraid of wearing color. I used to do it all the time when I was younger. When I was in high school, I was wearing like bright pink and blue and purples and oranges. So like, I'm not afraid to wear those bright colors. I just don't, because of just the time of when I'm working on them.
Does it feel weird to wipe it off when you spent 4 hours doing it? Does it like, this is so ephemeral, I have to wash it away, like one of those Buddhist sand paintings or something? Yeah,
like there are times when I will just stay up like an extra 30 minutes just so that I can enjoy that it's on my face. And then I'm like, okay, I have to go to bed. So then I wipe it off. And like, there are just some looks where I'm like, I have to recreate this another day, because it just, sometimes, like I said, it's sad. Like, I don't want to wipe it off, but at least I got a picture of it. So
yeah, thank goodness for photographs. Tell me about your makeup kit. Do you have like a gazillion colors, or do you mix colors? I'm so intrigued by how you get the colors so beautiful.
So there's a lot of brushes involved.
Okay.
So very much like how with painting brushes, you have certain brushes that are shaped for specific textures, specific strokes. Very similar in makeup. So you have one of the brushes that I use, that I have a lot of, is blending brushes. So those are your more tapered, a little bit fluffier brushes, and that helps to blend the color out, and so you get a smooth gradient. So I have those in various shapes, or I should say sizes. So if I just want like a wash of color over my eye, then I would use the more like the fluffier one of that. If I want to like pack color on and then just gently kind of buff it out, that's when I would use like a smaller blending brush. For eyeliner, anytime I do graphic liner, I have those very thin, fine point brushes that I use for that. And then I'm trying to think. So for like eyeshadow brushes, those are more of like, they're kind of shaped more like a paddle is the best way I can describe them. And just depending on what I'm doing, the amount of detail work, if I'm doing more detail work, the brushes tend to be a lot smaller. And then if I'm just kind of doing like a wash of color and I can just be a little bit more messy with it, then the brushes I use, they're a little bit larger and they're a lot more fluffy. So
yeah. Wow. And I love how you capture some birds, some butterflies have an amazing iridescence, and you really capture that in some of them. Do you love working with that sort of shimmery product?
Yeah. So to answer your question about like the colors and stuff that I have a bunch of palettes. I've been collecting makeup for a long time. And so there are palettes out there where it's literally like the color of the rainbow, which is great because when you're working with looks, it's nice to just have it all in one palette, and you don't have to keep constantly buying palettes that don't have it. So when you have all your colors in one, it's really nice. And then for like the sparkle that you see, there are eyeshadows that's like the way they're made, which is really nice. They're made just to have that nice shimmer to it, which is awesome. So yeah, I really like working with those. A lot of the times I'll put those like in the corner of my eye and then underneath my eyebrow. And then if I hit, and when I turn my head just right, the light shines on it where I can get that cool iridescence. So yeah, there's a bunch of different shadows that I have, bunch of different finishes. You know, I have a lot of mattes, shimmers, metallics. So yeah, there's a lot in my. I have a makeup desk now, and my drawers are just full.
It's growing.
Yeah, it's definitely growing. Yeah.
And I love that I mean, if it was just the photo of the animal or plant and your makeup look, that would be enough. But you also just have this incredible description and all this research that goes behind it. Mm-hmm. And it's really full and rich. The experience of, encountering just one of your posts is all these different elements. And one huge one is the research. And I'd love for you to talk about that, about the research that goes into each post.
Yeah. So, for those posts, it probably takes me about 2 hours to do research on that. And I know, for that amount of time, for that size of a caption, it's like, wow, because I try to not make those captions too long, but I also don't want to make them too short either. So like, I want to make sure that I'm making those connections with my followers as far as, talking about something about that animal or that plant that they can walk away with like, wow, I never knew that, or wow, that's a really cool fact. And so I do the research and I just, I get all the fun facts, if you will, about that animal or plant. And then I have to sit down and write it in a way that is not like super scientific. It doesn't come across like a textbook or something like that. So I do try to make those captions a little bit more casual when you read them. So it's, like I said, so again, that kind of helps with the connection of being like, hey, you don't have to know all these scientific words and the scientific names and all that stuff, So I think, so like in all, it probably takes me anywhere from about 4 to 5 hours per post. So that's makeup, taking the picture, editing the picture where I need to, research, writing it, posting it.
It's a lot of investment, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But so wonderful. I'm so glad I came across your account. And I must say, because I have never been interested in makeup, I just sort of looked over it really quickly and thought, oh, a makeup account. And then I saw what it really was, and I just fell into it, and I have been so engaged and inspired by it, and it just makes me so happy to see what you do, the way you interpret things, and the way, like, the depth that you put into each post is really clear. You say it takes you a really long time, 5 hours maybe, to do a post, and it comes across like you've put in so much of yourself into it. Not only the self that loves makeup, but also the self that loves nature and research, and I just love it so much.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you could describe Michigan, because I don't know much about Michigan, and I love to connect with my guests and nature where they are.
Mm-hmm.
What does nature look like around you?
So here in Michigan, we have a different assortment of ecosystems. So where I'm at, there's outside of the suburbs. So like where I work, for example, there is marsh all around us. So that is what our park is known for, is for that marsh habitats. And so you've got just an incredible amount of diversity of animals in that area. I mean, we've got fish, reptiles, amphibians, birds, mammals. I mean, all of that in one small area of southeast Michigan. And then just depending on where you travel in Michigan, you know, you have the deciduous forests in the lower part of Michigan. And then as you move up the mitten, you start to get your coniferous forests. So now you're starting to get those pine trees and those evergreens. And so it really does change depending on where you're at. And then there's some sections of Michigan where there's a bog and we have fens and things like that. So it's hard to kind of peg, you know, one habitat for the entire state. But I will say we are very wet. We have a lot of water because we're surrounded by the Great Lakes. And, you know, I forgot like what the actual statistic is, but I think it's like I know I'm probably getting this wrong and this is so bad of me as a Michigander, but it's like, I think it's like every 10 miles or so, you're always going to be by a lake. So there's always water somewhere here in Michigan. So yeah, it's like I said, it's kind of hard to peg down, but those are the big ones. You know, like I said, you've got a lot of forests, wetlands. So yeah.
It sounds like there's so much diversity you could just do the rest of your time with the makeup looks of Michigan-inspired nature.
Yeah. Yep, I could, for sure, yeah.
So what's next? What are you going to do next for your Instagram page? Do you know? Do you have a plan?
So one of the things that I've been asked a couple times, and I'm just a little shy because I feel like people aren't going to watch it. But I've been asked a few times, why aren't you doing these, like, why aren't you doing Instagram lives?
Yes.
And like I said, I've had some people ask me that, and I'm like, should I do it? Because people were like, oh, you know, I would so watch you do that. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, so I really am starting to play with the idea of starting to do Instagram lives and have it be more of like, have it not be like so short and like getting the chance to actually talk with people while I'm doing makeup. And I've also, again, this is one of those things where it's like, I just need to take the leap and do it. Yeah. But I've also thought about like doing like a monthly club or something like that where, you know, once a month we go like on Zoom or something like that and everybody's just doing their makeup and we're all talking about nature or whatever. And I've been toying with that, and it's one of those things where it's like just take the leap already and do it.
Yes.
Now that I've said it, now I have to do it.
Yeah. I think that would be amazing. I think it would be a whole nother way of gathering people to the environment by using what they love, which is makeup. I just think it's a great idea. I think Instagram Live's a great idea. I would absolutely watch you. I'm so excited to have been able to have this chance to talk with you and to talk about nature journaling in this unique and inspiring new direction.
Oh, thank you. I very much enjoyed our conversation. It means the world that to be interviewed. You have no idea. So thank you, really, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Sabrina. Now, if you have access to Instagram, go to the show notes of this episode right now and click through to see Sabrina's images. I got completely lost in her work and I've been so amazed to see what she creates and how she interprets her natural subjects. This conversation brought up several things that I want to touch on. Sabrina and I talked about women not being taken seriously when they wear makeup in environmental fields. I love how Sabrina is smashing that stereotype and showing up as her authentic self, saying, yes, I love nature, and yes, I also love makeup. I think it's really important that we collectively try to remove the boxes that have historically been placed around people. And I think it's important that I correct myself and say that it's not just women. Whatever your orientation, you should be able to wear makeup if that's how you feel most authentically you. And this isn't about makeup. This is about the fact that each of us should have the chance to feel safe and comfortable to live in the full expression of ourselves and not have to feel pressured to let go of what makes us feel whole. Whatever makes you feel authentic and whole, may you be able to freely express and celebrate that each day of your life. Thanks so much for listening. See you next week.